Picture this. You're walking alone. The ground is uneven, wet, unfamiliar. Your foot catches on a root you didn't see. You feel it before you hear it, a sharp, hot snap in your lower leg. Pain floods your body. You're on the ground now. You can't stand. In your pocket is a phone. Within minutes, help is coming. Now take the phone away. Take away the road. The hospital. The word for pain medication. Take away all of it. Put yourself back 45,000 years. You're a Neanderthal, somewhere in what is now northern Iraq. Your leg has just done the exact same thing. There is no ambulance. There is no cast. There is only your body and the people standing around you. In 1957, an American archaeologist named Ralph Seletsky began excavating a cave called Shanidar in the Zagros Mountains of Iraq. Inside, he uncovered the skeleton of a Neanderthal man, roughly 40 to 50 years old at death. His bones told a story that shouldn't have been possible. His right arm had been amputated above the elbow. His skull showed a healed blow to the left eye socket, almost certainly leaving him blind on that side. His right leg was withered and underdeveloped, likely from a childhood injury that changed the way he walked for the rest of his life. Hearing loss in one ear was probable, based on bone growth in his ear canal. And every one of these injuries had healed fully, years before he ever died. What this skeleton proves is going to change the way you think about strength, about survival, and about what actually kept the human species alive long enough to become us. Paleoanthropologist Eric Trinkaus spent years analyzing this man, now known to science as Shanidar 1. His conclusion was simple and devastating. A man with one working arm, one eye, partial deafness, and a crippled leg could not hunt. He could not track game across mountain terrain. He could not defend himself from the cave lions and hyenas sharing his landscape. In an Ice Age world that should have been a death sentence within weeks. Instead, the healing in his bones shows he lived for years after his injuries. Some estimates suggest close to a decade. Someone fed him. Someone guided him across terrain he could no longer see fully. Someone carried his share of the work, for years, with nothing to gain from it except his continued presence beside them. This wasn't an isolated case. Because 800 miles away, in a limestone cave in France, another skeleton was about to tell the same story, with even less room for doubt. In 1908, two French priests, brothers Amédée and Jean Bouissonnet, were excavating a small rock shelter near the village of La Chapelle-aux-Saints, in southwestern France. What they found was the skeleton of a Neanderthal man, later nicknamed the Old Man. He was roughly 40 years old, elderly by Neanderthal standards, where average life expectancy hovered closer to 30. His spine was warped by severe arthritis. Several vertebrae had fused together. He had lost nearly all of his teeth years before death, with the jawbone showing smooth, healed-over sockets, meaning the gums had reabsorbed the bone long before he died. A man with no teeth cannot chew raw meat. He cannot process tough roots or unprocessed grain. In a world with no mortar, no fire-cooked porridge as a fallback, no soft food industry, that should be starvation, slow and certain. But his bones show years of continued growth after tooth loss. Someone was preparing his food differently. Pounding it. Softening it. Feeding a grown man like an infant, day after day, for years, because his group had decided he was still worth keeping alive. Here's what's strange. Neither of these men could offer anything back in the currency evolution supposedly cares about. No hunting. No defense. No reproduction in the old man's case, at his age. By the cold logic of survival of the fittest, both should have been abandoned. But here's where it gets stranger. This wasn't unique to Neanderthals. In 2001, a team excavating a cave called Riparo del Romito, in southern Italy, uncovered the 10,000-year-old skeleton of a young man with a severe form of dwarfism, Romito II. His condition would have made him nearly useless for the physically demanding hunts his community depended on. He lived to be about 17. He was buried with care alongside another individual, in a formal grave, not discarded, not left behind. 3 separate sites. 3 continents apart in research history, thousands of years apart in time. The same pattern over and over. Bodies that modern intuition says should have been left to die, kept alive instead, deliberately, for years. And once you see the pattern, a harder question follows. This didn't happen by accident. It couldn't have. Keeping an armless, half-blind man alive for a decade takes food you didn't hunt yourself, water you carried for someone else, vigilance during hours you could have spent resting. That's not instinct. That's a decision, made over and over, day after day, by people with every reason to stop. So what does it actually take, physically, to heal a shattered bone with no metal, no antiseptic, no antibiotics? And what does the evidence say they were actually doing to make it happen? Bone does not need a hospital to heal. It needs three things: the pieces held still, enough nutrition to rebuild, and enough time. Modern forensic analysis of healed prehistoric fractures, including work published by paleopathologist Charlotte Roberts, shows many ancient breaks set at slightly imperfect angles. That detail matters. It means these bones weren't professionally realigned. They were splinted roughly, likely with wood, bark, or hide, then left to knit on their own, sometimes healing crooked but strong. At Shanidar, the healed amputation of that Neanderthal man's arm shows something else: smooth, rounded bone at the injury site. Not jagged. Not infected. Trinkaus and later researchers proposed the wound may have been deliberately treated, possibly cauterized, possibly bound tightly enough to stop bleeding long enough for the body to seal itself. No germ theory. No understanding of infection at a cellular level. And yet, survival rates in some of these cases suggest whatever they were doing worked often enough to matter. Except there was a problem money and technology can't solve, and it wasn't medical at all. Setting a bone takes minutes. Healing takes months. A femur fracture in an adult can take 12 to 16 weeks just to knit, and far longer to bear full weight again. That's an entire season. A season of that person eating without gathering, drinking without fetching, sleeping in the safest spot in camp while others kept watch. For a group that might number only 15 to 30 people, the size anthropologists estimate for most Paleolithic bands, that's not a minor cost. That's one fewer hunter for a winter. One more mouth fed by hands that are already exhausted. And they paid it. Over and over, across tens of thousands of years, in caves from Iraq to France to Italy. Here's the reframe. You've probably been taught that evolution is a story about the strong outlasting the weak. Claws sharper. Legs faster. The fittest, surviving. But the oldest direct evidence we have of human care isn't a monument. It isn't a tool. It's a 50-year-old skeleton with one arm, one eye, and a decade of someone else's help written into his bones. Natural selection didn't just favor strength. Somewhere along the way, it started favoring the willingness to carry someone who couldn't carry themselves. That instinct is still in you. It's in every splint, every hospital bed, every person who has ever stayed up beside someone who couldn't get better alone. It didn't start with medicine. It started in a cave 45,000 years ago, with a decision to stay.